Can I talk to you about some stuff? Lately, the Lord has been prompting me, leading me to get back on and do another recording, another video, and release it. And I was pondering about what to say. I wasn't getting any direction. And then I started thinking about what happened to me 46 years ago. And June and July of 1978. Up to that point, up to that time, two of my sisters had radically became Christian, became radical Christians, and they were sharing with me about the love of Yeshua, the love of Jesus. And not only that, my grandmother, who I absolutely adored, and who was like a mother to all of us, who was always there. And anyway, she got radically saved. And she also was writing me letters as she was writing all her grandchildren these letters. And she sent us all Bibles, New Testaments, Good News, New Testaments. And I just felt like, and also my best friend in high school, we were best friends since sixth grade and did a lot of wild stuff, a lot of teenage stuff that people did in the 1970s, early 70s together, drinking, partying, going out and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. She goes off to college in Detroit, comes back saved, radically saved, and wants to tell me all about Jesus, all about Yeshua. And all the time, I was offended, really. To be honest, I was offended by all of them. And I tried to shut them off, but these people were the closest people in my life. They were closest to me. And I knew that my life was starting to fall apart by 1978. Things I wanted were not happening. Things I didn't want happen were happening to me. I was far away from home. And I started thinking about what my sisters, my best friend, my grandmother, what everybody was saying to me. I felt surrounded, like backed in a corner by all my Christian friends, but there was something about them that really spoke to me, that really got my attention. And anyway, so I went to my husband's Catholic priest to talk to him about God because I had so many questions. I didn't know who to go to. And at that time, because I was living so far from my family and far from my loved ones, I went to him. And the one thing that he said was that I needed to read the Bible, and I needed to read not just any Bible, but I needed to read a very easy version of the Bible when he suggested the Good News Bible. And he also suggested that I start reading in Matthew, not from the beginning, but in the Gospels. So I took him up on it, and I read through the Gospels, and I read all the way halfway through Romans when finally everything clicked. Up to that point, I thought, yes, Jesus guy was a pretty cool dude. I thought he was like a hippie, radical, one of these going out, and advocating for social justice. I saw him as that, coming from a far off place called Galilee, like we had the South, kind of like from Hicksville. But he spoke loudly, he spoke clearly, and people heard him. And I thought, wow, what a cool guy is this Jesus. And I also thought to myself, if this guy lived today instead of 2,000 years ago, I would have followed him. Well, lo and behold, I discovered that he is alive today, and I'm following him 46 years later. And and my life has never been the same since. But as I've been reading the Bible, and I didn't go to church at first, I just read the Bible, and I kept thinking, wow, this is really amazing. And I was wondering, is there a church or any place, a gathering of people who are like this, like what I was reading in the Bible? And I went to church, and I found that it was not true, at least in the churches that I was going to. And I was very disappointed because they were not doing the stuff. They weren't doing the stuff. And the stuff that Jesus did, like healed the sick, he healed the sick, he cast out demons, like their people's worlds were completely altered, completely changed because they met this guy named Jesus, this dude named Jesus. And the first thing that Jesus said that when his first sermon that he preached, It's in Luke chapter 4. And it says, in starting in verse 18, and it's a quote from Isaiah 61. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, and the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." And that was his first sermon. And then from there, he started doing the stuff. He started healing. And that was his first thing that he ever said as he came here, his first public sermon. And then the last thing that Yeshua said was in Mark chapter 16, starting at 15. And then he told them, "Go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. Anyone who believes and is baptized will be saved, but anyone who refuses to believe will be condemned. And these miraculous signs will accompany those who believe. They will cast out demons in my name. They will speak in new languages. They will be able to heal the sick." Really, this is not in this Bible, but it says in other versions, "Speak, and they will be able to handle snakes with safety, and they'll drink anything poisonous, and it will not hurt them. And they put this on the end. They will be able to place their hands on the sick, and they will be healed." So I was wondering, is there anybody out there in the world? Because I was so new to all of this, I did not know anything. Is anything like this happening in 1978? Well, I found out it is. It was 1978 was right in the middle of the charismatic renewal. And a couple of the churches that I visited were very charismatic. They were entering into the charismatic movement. And they did things like speaking in tongues, and they did things like laying hands on the sick. And some people did get well. They did things. I didn't see so much at that time, any casting out of demons, any of deliverances, but I believed once I saw the healings, once I saw the tongues and other things, and also I felt the Spirit of God, I knew that could have been happening too. That could have happened too. So, where can I find anybody who will do the stuff, who are doing the stuff? As John Wimber quoted that, coined that word, but I was saying it long before I even knew who was John Wimber. Like, who is it that's doing this stuff? Who is it that's healing the sick? Who is it that's speaking in tongues? Who is it that is casting out demons, even raising the dead? Who is it that's doing that? Forget about the snake thing. That was a little bit weird for me, but all the other stuff, like, who is doing it? And I went for many years. In fact, I got involved in the charismatic churches in upstate New York. And then, over the years, I became a solid member of the church. And I did receive the baptism of the Spirit, and I did speak in tongues. At first, I didn't realize I had the gift. And then when the pastor started praying, we were praying about some really heavy subject in our church. I think there was a man in our church who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was doing some really, really weird things. And the whole church, as a church, we got behind him, and we prayed and we prayed. And I remember one Wednesday night especially, where we came in the church, we practically locked ourselves in the church and prayed and prayed and prayed. And I remember our pastor walking up and down the aisles and around and around and around, praying loudly in tongues. And before I knew it, I found out that I was praying a lot right along with them in tongues. And I didn't even know I had the gift. It was really, really cool. So I had all of that. And then over the next 40 years, I got involved in charismatic and Pentecostal churches here and there throughout Connecticut when we moved here. And but for the most part, I didn't see the stuff. I did not see the miracles. And I wanted to see why. I wanted to know why, that in the churches, why are we not seeing it, and really, to be honest, nobody was praying for it. Nobody was praying. In fact, some of these one Pentecostal church I went to, especially, they didn't even pray in tongues. They didn't even operate in any of the signs and the wonders. So who is doing the stuff? And I looked around and I found out about some churches down the road and visited some of these churches down the road. And this was in the mid 1990s, 94, 95. And the Toronto blessing was hitting around in strategic places. And so I visited this church that down the road that was really into the Toronto blessing. And it was amazing. You could feel the presence of God all over the place, and crazy things were happening. People were getting prayed for and they fell over, some really wild things happened, the tongues were everywhere, and I loved it. And for about 9-10 months, maybe longer, maybe about a year or more, I went to that church on Wednesday nights when they had their revival services. And after a while, I started going there on Sunday mornings. And I loved, just being like basking in the spirit. It was really, really, really cool. But again, I didn't see the miracles. I did not see legs grow. I did not see people being healed or being delivered. I didn't see any of that. So who and where is the stuff happening? Who is doing the stuff? And then over the years, the Lord called me into this prayer ministry. I began to burn with prayer for my state and for my region, for New England, for Connecticut. And I started praying and praying and inviting my friends over, and we would pray and pray and pray. Got a reputation. They started calling me intercessor. And we were just crying out to God, because we wanted so desperately to see God's hand move. We had visions, we had prophetic words that were wonderful, but I don't remember anybody getting healed, anybody getting delivered in my living room or my basement. I had a lot of people coming to my basement down in, my prayer room. I called it my prayer room, but it was really the family room. Not seeing anything, other than, we saw some great things. We had some prophetic words that we wrote down diligently and faithfully. And the presence of God was all over the place. But I did not, with my own eyes. I heard about it. We were passing around videos from Pensacola, from Brownsville, and people were sharing about how they were healed and delivered. But with my own eyes, I didn't stand in front of a person and see them healed. With my own prayers, my laying hands on someone, I believed that I could do it, but it didn't happen. And it just didn't happen. So where was the stuff? Who was doing the stuff? And then over the years, the Lord called me down to Hartford, and I started a house of prayer down there. And I bought a house on Brown Street. I bought a little ramshackle house, turned the main floor into 2 prayer rooms and my office, but ended up being a storage room. And then I lived upstairs. And I think I forgot about the stuff. I wanted it, but it just got old. 40 years went by. Well, it really wasn't 40, maybe about 30 years went by, and not seeing it. And then a mother and daughter walked into my house, my little house. There was about a half dozen of us praying, and we were having the presence of God was all over us, all over the room, and we were worshiping and praying and praying. And then when this mother and daughter, who I knew, that the mother had come to quite a few of my prayer meetings previously, when I was in another place before I bought the house. But anyway, they came in my house and they sat down and we prayed and prayed for them. And then the daughter, who was at that time 17 years old, because she was a teenager and we wanted to sow our prayers into her, my friend and I laid hands on her, and we had all kinds of powerful words for her, called her an Esther, called her a Deborah, called her to be a possible a leader in her generation. I mean, all of the words that most people share, when they pray for teenagers. It was really it was glorious. It was a lot of fun. But then after we got done praying, she said, there's something I need to tell you. She said that I have cancer. She said she had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then she said, I have 6 tumors up and down my back, big tumors. And we felt her back, and I felt the tumors. We felt the tumors. So we got the oil out. I think we already had the oil out for the prophecies, but we just started pouring oil over her again and laid hands on her and prayed and prayed and prayed. But, I prayed for a lot of people, but not seeing anybody healed. This was okay. We wanted to sow into this young girl, and we really wanted God's best for her. But to be honest, I did not have the faith for her healing. And I don't know if my friend did. Maybe my friend did and made up for what I didn't have. But anyway, at the end of the following week, this girl contacted me. She said she had a full body scan, and they found absolutely no tumors in her at all. And here this girl is now in her 40s. Yeah, she's in her 40s, and she just got married, and the cancer has never returned. And I thought, wow. I knew it wasn't me because, like I said, I had very little faith. But I believed, and I wanted to see the stuff. And now here I am, 46 years later. I still have a little house of prayer in Hartford. We still pray for people, still believing for miracles. And again, we saw some miracles, but not a lot. I mean, it's not like every day. I don't have crutches lining my walls, and I don't have a lot of stuff, a lot of things, stating that they have been healed by. And it's really, and I know it's because of God. If I would have hung out my shingle, people would have been lining up and wanting me to pray for them. And that's not what God wanted me to do, wanted any of us to do. But what I want is to share this testimony with you, because I sense a rumbling in the atmosphere, in the spiritual climate now. I sense that the Lord is not about to do something. He is doing something, but he's looking for faith. He's looking for a people of faith. Will he find faith on the earth? Does he have any people who maybe like me have been walking with the Lord for over 40 years and not seen a lot of miracles, maybe here and there, maybe a few here and there? And I have seen, since I moved to Hartford, I've seen a lot more miracles. Even mostly by other people laying hands on them, but I've seen a few with people I have prayed for as well. But I have seen more miracles, but it's not like it's every day. But I have a sense that it's going to intensify. But the Lord is looking right now, and is he going to find faith on the earth? Is he going to find that faith in you? Would you raise your hands and say, here are my hands. Here are my hands, Lord. I want to be used. Use me. Are you willing to put your hands on someone and pray for them? Even if you feel absolutely no anointing, even if you don't feel the presence of God, that's not what it's about. It's about stepping out in faith. And being, when I read this scripture in Mark 16, go into all the world and preach the gospel to anyone, and all those things following, that deliverance would happen, that healings would happen, even raising the dead will happen. All of this is going to happen. Miraculous signs will happen. Are you willing to be that person to be used? And all it does is take just maybe not even faith, but taking obedience. Whenever you see somebody who's sick, don't pass them by. Spend a minute or two. It doesn't have to be a long prayer, but just spend a minute or two just praying for them. I admit to you, I confess to you that I haven't done it with everyone, especially when I feel like I've really bottomed out and there's absolutely nothing in my spirit, man, nothing in that I can give. But even then, I know it was disobedience on my part. And I am going to try to do better. And I encourage you, even if you have no faith, if you believe that the Bible is the word of God and what is written there is true, maybe it's time for us to practice it, not just believe it, but to practice it. And not just practice it in church, not just practice it in prayer meetings, but when we meet somebody on the street, our coworker, our neighbor, our family member, would we take a minute or two to lay our hand on them and pray for them? Be bold enough to pray for them. I just encourage you with that, because I know God's on the move right now. God is on the move, and he's moving here. He's moving into our homes. But are we willing to have him move? Are we asking him to move into our homes and into our lives in a greater measure? In a greater measure. God bless you.